In this video, we'll talk about some of the more difficult sentence corrections that you might encounter on the verbal section of the executive assessment, those with very long underlines. So these are roughly a quarter to a third of the sentence corrections that you'll encounter in the verbal section. They're not necessarily more or less difficult than other sentence corrections. And they are sometimes deployed as part of a verbal section harder second half, but the main area of difficulty is just that there's a longer sentence to read, to be perfectly honest. Now, our strategic implications, you do still have to maintain your overall minute 30 average per sentence correction and a 2-minute maximum even for these longer sentence corrections. Because we want the sentence correction approach to be a more visual based endeavor, you shouldn't have to reread these sentences over and over again. You're just going to be scanning the answer choices and trying to visually identify differences in the answer choices and adjudicate them based on their technical meaning as opposed to listening for 5 different options. Do allow a maximum of a single reread before choosing to eliminate guess and move on. And that should happen when you're working through the answer choices. If you need to evaluate between two, at that point, reread. But remember, again, with sentence corrections, there should be basically one read at the beginning to try to identify an error, and then one read at the end to determine whether or not your answer introduces new issues of meaning. But if you need to, you've got one more reread as a maximum for these long underlines, but you have to beware of just rereading it over and over and over again, because that's a real quick way to throw off your pacing for the whole half. Now, do focus on the intended meaning to note logical incoherency in the original sentences written. Oftentimes, there's some sort of confusion or mix up in the intended meaning in these longer underlines. So you want to make sure that you're actually thinking about what it's trying to say as opposed to just looking to grammar auto match. You also want to consider the biggest and smallest common errors in the choices. And that's often going to be misplaced modifying phrases, so descriptors that can be relatively long, and that would be the biggest error, just physically, and just missing or incorrectly matching pronouns and articles, because those can be as simple as just the letter A, because A indicates a singular, non-specific item. And if you note those pronoun and article changes, you can often kind of cut these long underlined sentence corrections down to size and eliminate based on a very minute detail that you might have missed otherwise. So we have a sample sentence correction here, relatively long, right? So you will want to read the original sentence as written, noting intended meaning and potential top 3 issues. So that's going to be your subject verb agreement, your verb tense, and pronouns and articles. You want to use the non-underlined portion, if there is one, to inform issues affecting the underlined portion. And remember that, as always, choice A is the same as the original sentence. You want to also make sure you focus on one issue at a time to simplify your evaluation of these long underlines and avoid fully rereading each choice as you go. So let's take a look at this here. So always attempt to proactively identify the main actor or subject in the sentence is written to confirm proper subject verb agreement as a first step, because we know that